Does it feel like you actually come to a job every day, or do you feel like you come and hang out with people and do cool stuff?
Why don't you take us right back to the beginning?
I've been a contact lens wearer for most of my life, and I was not the most organized person. So when it came to things like my contact lenses, I'd forget, I'd run out. So I thought this is the perfect industry to try to disrupt and bring a brand that leaned into the convenience of a subscription. And we really wanted to offer something that was consumer focused. Technology that you have available now, it's never been easier to get a brand or business off the ground.
What are your thoughts on AI today?
We use it for content development, ad creation. We use it for creative direction. I use it in my daily life every day. When I drive to work, I have ChatGPT, and I literally sit and have conversations, and all the things I want to think about, I literally
Really?
just talk. Yeah.
What do you think are like the 2 or 3 things to really get right from the start?
Probably one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is
What do you think has been the biggest personal sacrifice?
you don't think about those sacrifices. You're there to build a business and
Exactly.
make it successful.
Shaun, incredibly excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We had an incredible retreat recently in Tasmania, which was where we met alongside so many other brands. But you've been working with Instant for an incredibly long time. This podcast has been a long time coming. I'm very excited to uncover the journey of Dimple and you as a business founder behind such an incredible brand. Jumping straight in, why don't you take us right back to the beginning of when you realized there was a problem to really tackle in this space?
So probably like a lot of people who start a business, it starts with your own, issues or challenges when it comes to a particular product or a need. I've been a contact lens wearer for most of my life, probably since I was about 12 years old. Started wearing them for contact sports when I was like 11. When I exited my last business, which I can talk about a little bit later, I was looking for things to do. I'd been in e-commerce for many years and really liked, the subscription model when it came to e-commerce. I'd really thought that from a subscription perspective, if you can take that model into a traditional, archaic industry and apply those, the whole LTV model with subscription, you really have a point of difference. And I think for me,
subscription has only been reserved for tech companies for so often. That's why they're so lucrative, right?
Well, it's great when you're trying to raise money and you talk about it from that perspective. People are like, oh yeah, it's like SaaS subscription, annuities. So when you're talking in those terms, people who want to come in and invest, they kind of feel familiar, because I think when it comes to the tech industry and investment in Australia, that's kind of where people feel most comfortable, rather than consumer businesses. So for me, with my contact lenses, I've been wearing them for years, switched to daily contact lenses, and I was not the most organized person. So, I'd be very good at organizing my business life, but when it came to things like my contact lenses, I'd forget, I'd run out, I'd have to go down to the optometrist, I'd try to get them there, they'd have to order them in, my prescription was high, so, I'd have to wait a week, wear my glasses. And I'm not a big fan of wearing glasses. And I just thought, this is such a boring industry. No one's really approached it from a consumer's perspective. The packaging is very pharmaceutical led. There's the pricing's quite expensive if you're looking at your daily lenses and wearing them every day. So I thought, well, sounds like the perfect industry to try to disrupt and bring a brand that, first of all, was more relevant for the younger consumers, but also leaned into the convenience of a subscription. And, we really wanted to offer something that was consumer focused. You could log in, you could do a free trial. If you liked it, you could stick to your subscription. If you didn't, you could cancel. No obligations. Right. You could customize the frequency. So that whole approach led with a more consumer design brand, I thought was a point of difference. And we were lucky enough to find an Australian manufacturer who've made some amazing high quality contact lenses. So we partnered with them on the manufacturing level, and that's how.
And what's the journey been like, say, over the last couple of years? You founded the brand in 2019.
Yep.
What's that kind of growth story been like? Where do you kind of sit today?
So yeah, the business has gone. There's quite a lot that's happened since
Sure.
then. So we launched in 2019, which was literally just before COVID hit, which was quite interesting because as a lot of people probably think, oh, COVID was a great time to be in e-commerce. Like everyone who was in e-commerce was seeing a massive spike in their sales. People were stuck at home. But the funny thing is, for us, it actually kind of had the opposite effect because people were stuck at home. They didn't really need their contact lenses. They were sitting there like, well, I'm not going to waste my contact lenses while I'm stuck at home.
Put the glasses
so let's
on.
wear the glasses. So we just saw our subscribers it kind of plateaued, and then our revenue just dropped because people just kept pushing out their subscription while they were stuck at home.
Right.
It kind of picked back up after COVID, and from there we actually launched the business into New Zealand and into Singapore as well. So exact same model, but using a 3PL in those countries, and launched it there. So we tried to scale the business, by going into multiple countries. The industry itself is not massive. In Australia, contact lenses, the market's not huge. We knew that. So for us, it was all about how do we take what we do here, use Australia as like a testing ground, and then scale the business. But funnily enough, like as part of like my research when I was looking into the industry and looking into the business opportunity and planning this whole original business, I also looked at the cosmetic lens space, which is color contact lenses. And I remember color contact lenses from a long time ago, and they used to be really uncomfortable and looked really fake, but they'd changed and the technology had improved so much since then. But what I realized was that there was actually a gap in the market. The Western markets, Australia, North America, UK, Europe, they were growing quite quickly, but kind of underserved from a brand perspective. Most of the brands that focused on color lenses were from Asia, Korea, Japan, and from what I could see, weren't really resonating with the consumers in the markets that we wanted to tackle. So we definitely saw that, and we put that on the roadmap, and we're like, we'll get to that. Let's just launch the subscription business first. And then 2022, 23, we launched Dimple Colour. And the difference with that is, I guess, with the subscription business, we saw very different behaviors.
Sure.
When you look at our subscription numbers, the business was growing and was growing nicely, but it was very hard to scale that business. So as soon as we kind of tried to spend more on performance marketing, we saw the cost of acquisition go up. We also saw that we started to attract customers that weren't as loyal. So we used to see like retention drop off. So it was kind of very hard to find that point where we could actually, feel like we found product market fit and then put our foot down and scale.
Before we dive into Dimple Colour, just to kind of finish on the Dimple contacts, because that was obviously where you launched, right? It's kind of a core part of the founding journey.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that business that so many other brands love, obsess about, talk about is this subscription piece.
Yeah.
And as you said previously, it's a huge part of something that so many other brands desire.
Yeah.
Maybe taking a negative look on the subscription business, what do you think were some of the biggest mistakes, learnings, low points of that? Obviously, you mentioned COVID, but anything else come top of mind when it comes to that type of business model that, say, other brands should be aware of?
Yeah, I think with subscription, people think of it as like the holy grail. I was like, from e-commerce, it's like if you can get people onto a subscription, it's going to be a success. But I think the way I see it now, and looking back at our traditional e-commerce business, which is Dimple Colour, and I look at Dimple Contacts, which is our subscription business, there's definitely a number of factors I think you need to consider before you jump into a subscription model. So obviously retention is super important, but the cost of acquisition is also really important. You've got to make that back through the subscription period. And for us, I think the average order value for the subscription is not that high. People are getting 1 month supply on average at a time. The average cost for that is about $50. Also, the margins in the clear business, which is us with Dimple Contacts, are not near where the Dimple Colour business is. It's much lower margin. We're coming in as a competitor to the big pharmaceutical companies. We have to be priced lower in order to get people to...
I was so surprised to learn that 4 manufacturers own 97% of the market.
It's the incumbents are strong. They have a lot of control over the supply chain. They've been around. Those are the players in the market. It's very hard to come in and be a competitor in that market, which is also interesting. Like you kind of think you quite brazen, you get come in there and take on the big manufacturers and take them on at their own game with something new and more innovative, which is true. But there's other factors, as I was saying. When it comes to the margins, we obviously had to come in cheaper. The cost of daily lenses are quite expensive to make because previously you used to make one pair. Now you have to make 30 pairs for a month's wear, and still 30 pairs, 60 lenses compared to 2, what people used to wear. So, we take into account the margin, the frequency of those orders, the payback period on that cost of acquisition can actually take a while. And that was the biggest thing that we realized quite early, is that, we're investing upfront to acquire customers. And when it comes to our business is very much focused on performance marketing. We're very meta heavy, as a lot of consumer brands are. But when you factor in the cost of acquiring those customers and then the payback period, there was a lot of cash flow required to service that growth. The difference, and that was what my experience was with the subscription. Sometimes it could take 6 to 8 months to actually break even on acquiring those customers. So what I learned, what I realized is, the most important thing is you got to have good margins, in any business. And I think especially today with international, with how things are changing, things like tariffs, if you don't have good margins, you don't know what you need to weather in terms of things that are coming up. So I think having good margins is, first of all, super important for any consumer business that is performance marketing focused. But the difference that we saw with Dimple Colour is that when we launched that, being able to scale quite quickly, we found product market fit quite early on in Australia. And then when we opened up to the international markets, we actually saw the trajectory just grow at a rate that we didn't anticipate at all.
So in 2023, you launched Dimple Colour, which is by far the most fascinating part of the Dimple journey and most exciting today, right? I think that's where you spend majority of your time and attention now, which is incredibly exciting, and it's such a industry that is untapped. I mean, contacts is still huge, right? But this new brand is taking off incredibly quickly. Talk to us about the journey of launching that, I guess, new brand, new product.
Sure.
Maybe with a particular highlight on some of the lowlights, because I mean, it wouldn't have been easy, right?
No, I mean, it was, when I was told people that I was launching a new brand, everyone's like, well, is it going to be a distraction? You haven't really gotten the original business to a level that you wanted to, before you want to launch this new brand.
On that point, do you think that launching the new brand, I feel like in our world, whether it's startups, a tech company, or a D2C brand, there's this philosophy that it's okay to fail. And I think that it's okay to fail on a per product perspective, let's say. But as a company, it's like, as a founder, there's no way you want to fail.
No.
Was launching the new brand, what was truly the reason for launching the new brand?
Well, to be honest, it kind of, I could spin it and say we pivoted, but it wasn't really a pivot because it was always part of the overarching plan for Dimple as a parent, as a brand, as a business. We were going to go into the subscription business, and then we were going to go into the color lens business. But if you look at it in hindsight, it kind of does feel a little bit like a pivot.
Sure.
I think you got to go with your gut, and sometimes you got to take. I think as an entrepreneur, instinctively, there's a lot of signals that no matter what people tell you externally, you kind of get a feel for whether things are, you've pulled every lever and things are plateauing, or things are not kind of scaling the way you wanted it to scale. And it wasn't like it was just like the shiny new toy to focus on, but I just, from my experience in the industry for a while, I really saw that the opportunity and the, TAM for the color lens business was going to be a lot bigger than what we were playing in with the subscription business.
Sure.
So yeah,
and it's obviously taken off, right?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, it kind of all of my preconceived ideas or thoughts about the business and the opportunity actually came true. So we were very lucky to kind of find to launch the brand. It was very well received. We spent a lot of time on product. as much as we spent on brand, is in terms of developing products that we thought and that we're working with our customers that we knew they wanted. And yeah, we've been successful in pretty much every market we've gone into, which has been, quite
What's
crazy.
been the hardest market?
Hardest market, I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily been a hardest market. I think in terms of, growth, there's been markets that have scaled quickly. North America scales really quickly, huge market. Consumers there have different sort of behaviors. Middle East has been a great market. I mean, the average order value there is double what we're seeing in any other market.
Wow. What have you done there to get the business off the ground?
I mean, to be honest, we generally just take what we're doing in Meta and we apply that to those markets.
Right.
Sometimes we'll test it with the same creative, similar messaging, and then if things start to work, then we'll dial in a little bit and localize. We might use local influencers, local content creators, but yeah, that's probably as nuanced as we get in each of those markets. We do run separate campaigns and we do kind of pull out markets that are performing and look at each one separately.
Sure.
We might then apply a Google strategy as well as a bit more of an influencer-led strategy. But right now it is.
What does the makeup of your team look like today to make that possible?
So we do everything in-house. So my previous business, I had an e-commerce agency. We actually were two doors up from here on
nice.
Foster Street on the top floor. Yeah. So I did that for 10 years. And we had 150 people in the business doing everything, building all massive e-commerce sites for, retailers like Pet Barn and, Sass and Bide and Athlete's Foot, all those kind of brands. So, coming from that of having the agency business, I was like, when I start this business, I'm only going to build it internally.
Sure.
So everything's internalized.
Do you think that allows you to move quicker?
Much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And
at what point in the business journey is it right to do that?
So I guess for me, I was doing everything. So from the performance marketing.
So it was always in-house.
I was always in-house. I had started off, I was like, I don't know social media. That's not my world. I hired someone to run the social media, but I kind of was doing everything else from the e-commerce, the website design, the build, the running the ads. I was kind of using all the skills that I had previously, which was great. And then slowly I just brought people in to take over each of those roles. Performance marketing, I think, from a creative perspective, having internal, teams internal team to create the social content, to repurpose that for ads. I mean, we've got an engine room now that, it's very hard to emulate through an agency model. I mean, the amount of creative we pump out on a weekly and monthly basis is huge. And I think unless you do that internally, you're just never going to be able to test and create enough content to really scale the business.
The journey of launching Dimple Colour in market, as I said, it's obviously incredible today, the scale that has already gotten to and is continuing to grow. What would you say is the moment where you realized, holy shit, we're onto something here, and maybe we're starting to make it. We've had a breakthrough.
I think it's funny. I think you. If I look back, I probably would have been earlier than what I actually allowed myself to accept.
Sure.
I think as a founder, you kind of never. I always take a bit of a pessimistic view of things, and I think that kind of pushes me to work harder and push a bit harder. But really, I think once the business, I mean, I'm always a big sort of advocate for scaling a business, but scaling profitably. I think that, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that use vanity metrics around scaling a business, but at the end of the day, if you growing but you're losing money consistently, it's kind of different for a tech business because, at the end of the day, there's a lot of costs involved in building the tech and maintaining, and you do hit an inflection point at a different stage. But I think for consumer brands these days, with the amount of technology available to you to actually spin up a website and start selling, I think there's no reason you shouldn't be able to become profitable early on in the journey. And I don't think it's a case of getting to $50 million before you become profitable. I think really, especially in Australia, you want to become profitable early on and be able to reinvest those profits to scale the business rather than rely on external funding. So
It's super interesting because there's a huge push around D2C brands getting investors and huge amounts of capital. And I was talking to Anita about this on the podcast last week, actually. We were both just saying, if you've got the money there from investors, you just find a way to spend it. Whereas if you don't have it and you force yourself to be profitable, all of a sudden you become profitable.
100%. I think that's important. I think in Australia, it's hard to raise money for consumer brands. Obviously there's some very big success stories that have been able to raise a lot of money, but I think the general investor pool in Australia is focused on tech investments. That's where they see the multiples and the opportunity to make their 10 to 100x. With consumer businesses, more so in the US, there's an appetite for investment, but I think in Australia, it is a bit harder. So I think, being able to grow and scale a business organically is probably a safer bet. It's a bit harder because you have to be more resourceful. You have to figure out how to make things work. But I think there's no better time in the history to kind of be able to do that with, I've been around since, I'm not going to go tell exactly when I started, but I've been around since I call it ecommerce 1.0. When I was building e-commerce stores we built our own CMS in ASP.NET. And then
whip up a quick Shopify store for a $1 free trial.
And we built a SaaS platform. We had thousands of businesses using our technology before Shopify and Magento came along. And then there was the Magento days and Shopify 2.0, and now this is 3.0 with AI and Shopify and you guys with the technology that you have available now. It's never been easier to kind of get a brand or business off the ground.
What are your thoughts on AI today? How are you implementing it in the business?
From our perspective, we use it in a number of different ways. We use it for, content development, ad creation. We use it for, tomorrow we got a big campaign shoot. Our creative director's been using it to put together the mood board and the scripts and, figuring out what that kind of looks like. So creative direction is very helpful. Obviously, we use a lot of tech that uses AI as well, what you guys have, and there's other tools that we use that have AI built into it, which is making it much easier in terms of search and just being able to do a lot more personalized content for our customers. We're looking at building an AI tool also to help people, based on what they can use it, upload a photo, and it'll actually tell them what product is going to suit them best. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, I use it in my daily life every day. I literally, instead of when I drive to work, I have ChatGPT and I literally sit and have conversations, and all the things I want to think about, I literally just talk. So I have the chat mode on, and I literally just sit and chat. It felt a bit weird at the beginning, but
Does it start to learn about you?
I'm sure it knows a lot about me. Some good, some bad.
The journey to date as a founder, as a business owner, what would you say is, and taking kind of a negative approach, what would you say has been the biggest fuck up on your journey so far?
The biggest mess up. It's an interesting thing. I can think of a lot of things, but biggest learnings, I would probably say, not listening to. I mean, it's not it's not going to give you an exact response, but I think, as I was saying earlier, as a founder, listening to your gut instinct. I think there's a lot of decisions that could have been made sooner in terms of where the business needs to go, decisions you need to make in terms of what's in the best interest of the business, and through for whatever reason, whether it's external factors, people telling you otherwise, or just your
Do you have a really standout moment for that? I feel like on my side, the biggest thing to listen, the gut is so true, particularly when it comes to hiring people, or keeping people around. You just have this gut feeling, particularly when you go through
you know what? That's hiring is absolutely one of those gut feel things where you can't always put an exact write down what's wrong, but when someone doesn't fit or that's not in their best interest to be in this business.
Sure.
I think I learned that in my last business is that you do need to act on those, because at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you, and you got to do what's right for the business. You got to do what's right for those individuals. But yeah, I think with the subscription business, for example, I think we kind of when it felt like we were at running like it was almost like an asymptote. Like we were kind of moving towards a profitability within the business, but it didn't feel like we were ever going to get there. It just felt like we were going to plateau, and it was like trying to make some decisions around how do we actually change this business model? What do we need to do to kind of get us into a point of profitability? And that's luckily that was when I actually launched Dimple Colour, and that kind of changed the trajectory of things. But yeah, I can't say there was one defining moment that was a massive fuck up.
Sure.
Like, in all
You're
honesty,
just too good.
No, not too good. It's just I think we just there was no moment where things would look like they were going to absolutely just fall off a cliff.
But I feel it's not your first business either, right? And I mean, you've had a lot of these learnings for so long that you've been able to implement in the journey. But I mean, there would be so many tough moments. Tough moments where
100%. There's definitely tough moments.
Whether it's cash or the business direction or people or product or time of year, etc. I mean, there's so many varying factors. What truly keeps you going? Is it the vision, the mission of the company, the ego, the money, what your friends think?
I mean, like a lot of businesses, there are times where you thought you're going to run out of money and, the business was going to close. I think everyone comes to those points where there's a chance that you go, well, is tomorrow going to be the last day the business is around? And, how am I going to tell people that, I fucked up and that the business and, I've lost not only, my time.
Well, you attach so much of your...
You do. Your identity becomes so entrenched with the business, and people have this expectation, and you have probably even a much higher expectation than everyone else in terms of being successful. So, I think that a lot of it is adrenaline. You kind of push through. I mean, like I look back at some of those earlier days and I go, wow, like I feel like I've got PTSD from when the business was at a point where I was like, well, I don't know if this is going to be around in 6 months. Like, what do we do to make sure? Because raising money at that point was probably not an option, and we just need to figure out how to get through. And you know what? You dig deep and you put on a brave face. And for the staff, you obviously don't want to be all doom and gloom, but you go home and you go, shit. What's going to be here? What do we do to make sure that this business is around? What
do you think has been the biggest personal sacrifice to starting a business?
Look, I think as any entrepreneur, you make multiple sacrifices.
Sure.
Your personal time is no longer really personal time. Your personal time becomes business time because you're working late hours, you work weekends. But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like work. I mean, does it feel like you actually come to a job every day, or do you feel like you come and hang out with like people and do cool stuff? That's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
But you sacrifice that. You sacrifice your sanity. At the end of the day, you're always thinking about the business. You're always worrying about it. It's your baby. It requires so much more time and attention from you than people who obviously work in the business. No matter how committed they are to the cause and how much they believe in the vision, at the end of the day, you will always care
the most,
multiple times more than anyone else in the business. Even investors won't care as much because that's not it's not the be all and end all. Where this is your life, you put all your time. I mean, that was always the case. I mean, I've never had it. Probably like you, I've never had an actual full-time job.
Sure.
I started my last business at university and they were like, we'll give it a go. And if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, I'll get a job. That was kind of the mentality we had when we started, Net started back in, the early 2000s. It was like, we'll give it a go. And if it works, it works. But I think you always have a different mindset. And those sacrifices, you don't think about those sacrifices. And you don't think about those sacrifices going into the business. They're just there and they're there, but you're there to kind of build a business and make it successful.
100%. I feel like as well when we catch up with so many of our founder friends, for example, where we cut straight to all the mistakes, all the problems, what's going wrong, all the negativity. It's so easy to be negative.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're a founder. Because that's what you're spending time on. You're not spending time on things that are going well half the time, right?
No.
But if you kind of look back on the journey, I think so many founders can very, very much pinpoint the things that they did well.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, we absolutely crushed our expansion into the Middle East, or
Yeah.
we absolutely nailed our social strategy from day one.
Yeah.
Or, influencers was such a huge channel for us once we launched that.
Yeah.
And they can kind of pinpoint these needle mover moments as a business. Looking back now, and if you were to start another brand, what do you think are like the 2 or 3 things to really get right from the start?
Well, I think, probably one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is like, why and the who. So, why are you starting this brand, or this, why are you going to sell this product? Who's going to buy it? Who's your customer? And why does this product need to exist? Like, will it make a difference if your brand is your product's there or not there? I think if you can figure out what that is and that there's a need for that product. The second thing is, I guess, making sure you've got the right unit economics.
Sure.
I think especially with e-commerce being, critical for most brands starting out today, you need to have the right unit economics, average order value, the margins need to be at a certain level in order to be able to turn a profit. So I think those things are probably critical for anyone starting a business. And then I guess you got to have the vision for this brand. Like how are you going to build a brand that people are going to love and connect with? Because at the end of the day, I think anyone can sell a product, but selling a product is kind of a means to an end. And at the end of the day, if you're just selling a product, you're going to become a very price-driven brand.
Sure.
And you're going to always need to be on sale, and it's going to be a race to the bottom. If you can build a brand, though, you can dictate prices, you can put up your price, and people will still buy from you because they have a connection. I think connecting with brands these days, and it sounds kind of cliched and cheesy, but if you can build a brand that people can really connect with on an emotional level, and they feel good about buying, and they get excited when they see your brand in an email, if you can do that, I mean, ultimately, and you can figure out how to build that brand story, those are probably the most important things. Then guaranteed, no matter what, you can do all the small things, and you can do some things like 5 out of 10. Your performance marketing could be a 6 out of 10. Your social strategy, your influencer, all that kind of stuff is important, but you don't have to be the best at that. I think those other fundamentals are absolutely
really
critical. You get those right, everything else will kind of fall into place.
Dimple Colour over the next 5 years, 5 years from now, where will we land?
We want this to be the number one global brand, but most importantly is building the story of how color contacts in our core markets, the Western markets, are going to become a household kind of more conventional beauty product. In other markets like in Asia and Korea, Middle East, color lenses are as much of a regular beauty product as eyeliner, eyeshadow, mascara. In the markets that we're really trying to push into and create a niches, that's where there's work to be done. And I think
What do you think are the things that you need to get right now to make that mission possible over the next 5 years?
I think it's to kind of normalize the product in those markets. It needs to be relatable. I think we've got a very interesting upcoming strategy with like a celeb influencer collaborations on the cards as well. That is going to help. But I mean, we've got famous people and personalities that wear our lenses already that people see, and we've got like singers, we got Tyler, we got like a bunch of the famous people that are wearing it, and that already starts to create that normalization. People go, oh wow, color lenses, like didn't think about that as a beauty product, maybe thought about it as Halloween product, but when they see it and they see it on these people, I think that's what creates that, like builds the industry, and that's what we're trying to do. The big pharmaceutical brands haven't really built the color lens market because that's not their sweet, that's not in their wheelhouse. They do the pharmaceutical stuff. So it's really on brands like us to kind of help build that story and tell that story. So I think for us, there is a big opportunity globally. And yeah, we've got some big aspirations of where this goes.
Incredibly exciting. I think that the journey of Dimple Contacts into Dimple Colour, the global expansion as it is today, the mistakes and turning them into incredible learnings, jumping on things like AI and truly, I guess, trying to be ahead of everyone else, being the innovator is so admirable. And I think, particularly here in Australia, like we saw last week, so many brands look up to the journey of whether it's Dimple Contacts or Dimple Colour as it is today, and you as a founder as well. So great to have you on.
Thank you.
And looking forward to seeing, over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, expecting some pretty incredible growth.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me on and telling the story. But and with you guys, I mean, amazing story, and really impressed with what you guys have done in the last few years. And we love using you guys and working with you. So hopefully have you along for the journey as well as we grow.
Cool. Thank you.